Good morning. This is Karl Schmidt from Calvary Lutheran Church, retired pastor. Welcome you to our sermon this morning for the second Sunday in Trinity, June 21st, 2020. Holiday, I guess it's Father's Day this morning. And so welcome to all fathers. Anyways, the text for this morning, it's actually a beautiful morning, by the way. It's hot outside and muggy. Oh, hot and muggy. Anyways, but that's nice because we have a lot of snow here in Western New York. So when it's under 3 feet of snow, I'll be glad that today was hot and muggy. Anyways, the text this morning is from Luke, the 14th chapter, verses 15 through 24. That's Luke chapter 14, verses 15 through 24. And when one of them that sat at meat with him heard these things, he said unto him, Blessed is he that shall eat bread in the kingdom of God. Then he said unto him, A certain man made a great supper, and bade many, and has sent his servant at supper time to say to them that were bidden, Come, for all things are now ready. And they all with one consent began to make excuse. The first said unto him, I've bought a piece of ground, and I must needs go and see it. I pray thee, have me excused. And another said, I have bought 5 yoke of oxen, I go to prove them. I pray thee, have me excused. Another said, I have married a wife, and therefore I cannot come. So that servant came and shewed his lord these things. Then the master of the house, being angry, said unto the servant, Go out quickly into the streets and lanes of the city, and bring in the poor and the maimed and the halt and blind. And the servant said, Lord, it is done, as thou hast commanded, and yet there is still room. And the Lord said unto the servant, Go out into the highways and hedges, and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. For I say unto you, that none of these men which were bidden shall taste of my supper. Here ends that portion of the gospel text from the Gospel of St. Luke, the 14th chapter, verses 15 through 24. Well, this morning we want to look particularly at verse 23. And verse 23 is actually a beautiful gospel sentence. In fact, the whole idea in this text is gospel and the quality or nature of the gospel. And that's very important. And let me just get to that right off the bat. The nature or quality of the gospel that this text shows us and that Jesus is teaching us is that the gospel, the intention of God in his gospel, or good news, because that's what word gospel means, good news, is that it is intended, his intention is that everyone, everywhere, all human beings be invited to come into God's home, into God's family, to be his sons and daughters together. And that, simply put, is the idea that Jesus is speaking here. And we'll get into the exact particular of why that is so in this text, especially from the Greek. It's very, very obvious in the Greek. Let me read to you verse 23. Again, this is Luke 14. And the Lord said unto the servant, Go out into the highways and hedges and compel them to come in, that my house may be filled. That my house may be filled. To fill up in the Greek here is a beautiful word that Jesus uses. We just in the English, that my house may be filled. It doesn't tell us much. It doesn't tell us the intention particularly of what the speaker is saying. But in the Greek, in the original language that Jesus in the New Testament is recorded speaking here, the word is genezo, from gemo. Gemo means to be full. And this is the verb form of that, gemizo. And this particular word here is in the subjunctive. The subjunctive is a very important way of speaking that we use. It's the form of speaking when we're in expectation or anticipation of something marvelous or wonderful, like kids with Christmas or like at a birthday party with presents. It's when someone is in anticipation of something good. And that is the Lord's idea in this section of Scripture from Luke 14, particularly verse 23, where he says that it is his, this is third person singular, it is his intention, because it begins with a hina clause. It's for to what purpose is the speaker speaking? And he tells us his purpose here. And it is that in the subjunctive, with expectation, God sends out his good news, which is the message of his Son, who's come into the world, born of Mary, this Jesus, this what they call the Christ, or the Messiah, Mashiach, the anointed one from the Hebrew. Christos, Christ, is just a Greek word that means the same thing as Mashiach. Both means anointed one. And so he is the one sent by God to fulfill God's purpose. You see, that's so often missed in all of this. What is church about? Well, humans have all sorts of purposes. In these days of turmoil, there's discussions about face masks with the plague that's gone around the world, pandemic, whatever you want to call it. I'm no medical person, so I don't know, but there's all sorts of human agendas at play, and it's well beyond figuring out what anyone's agenda is. Whether they say one thing and they mean another, who knows? It's too ridiculous to figure out anymore. But at the same time, when God speaks, his intention is important. That should not be ignored, because when he speaks, he's not speaking with false intentions. There's nothing duplicitous about what he says. When he says what he means, and he means that his house, his heavenly home, would be full, filled up, overflowing. That's the expression in the Old Testament, that our cup would be overflowing, that there would be the promised land overflowing with milk and honey, that it would be good things everywhere. This is God's intention. And how does he embrace that intention? With anticipation. God, the Father, looks with anticipation toward all people. Now, the church has not done this. That's simply historical record. When I say church, I mean the church throughout the ages. Whether it's the church of the New Testament or the Old Testament, people have always gone around God's words and made an idea of their own, that there's something exclusive about their little club. The church should never be a club. There should be nothing exclusive about the church. The church has no right to exclude anyone. That's not its privilege or its prerogative or its right. The church is the mouthpiece for God and does not speak the church's or human intentions, or it's not supposed to, and yet it oftentimes does. I'm retired from being a pastor for 35 years, and my goodness, I can't count the number of times that people have just off the cuff given a different intention for the church than that it's wide open to all people. That is what the Father's intention is. It doesn't really matter what human intentions are at all. Who cares? Doesn't matter if you're a bishop or a crown prince, or who cares who you are. You're human. And then there's God. And when God speaks, that's about the only voice that's going to matter. When all men are gone and the world is at an end, and God raises all the dead to kneel before him in silence. You know whose voice will matter? Oh, that's easy. That's super easy. When we're all kneeling before God in silence, the entire universe of humankind, in Greek that word is cosmos, for God so loved the cosmos, yeah. Well, then the only voice that will matter is the Father's voice. That's it. One voice. And he has spoken. And his intention is that all people of all descriptions, I'm not even going to go into descriptions. Why would it matter? When there's only one human being on the planet, scientists have told us there aren't two species of human beings on this planet. Oh, sure, there's all kinds of little genetic differences between people. Of course. But there's one species of human on planet Earth. That's it. At this moment in time. God has spoken to us as a species and said to us, his intention is that everyone would be in his home with him. And that's why he sent his son, not to make exclusive arrangements with one or another group of people on earth, no, but that the announcement of the good news would be like a candle on a high place, so that all people, every nation, every tribe, every language, everyone, everywhere could see it and stream to that holy mountain of God. And of course, that is his intention, that his house be full. How do we know? Because he says so. Third person, singular, first aorist, subjunctive, passive, the noun gemo from gemizo, and the form in the text is gemisthe. Gemisthe. Hina gemisthe mu ho orkios. That my house, the purpose of that, my expectation, my anticipation is that it would be filled right up with everyone. All because of what Jesus did for us, what the Father has done. It's not our doing that will bring us there. It's not your works, not your living. It's none of that. It's what God has done for us on our behalf. Because you couldn't do anything on your behalf. For all those people who think they're self-made, well, sorry. That's not the gospel message. The gospel message is that God has made us. He fashioned us out of nothing. And then he fashioned you. You didn't help make yourself. God made you entirely. He designed you just as you are. And he keeps you alive. Gives you your next breath. You think you're responsible for your heart beating? Good luck on your next visit to your doctor, where he tells you what your blood pressure is, and you're going, what? I didn't know it was that high. Yep, so you have to do something about it. See, you don't even really know what your blood pressure is until the doctor checks it and tells you, unless you're all red in the face. Then you might guess what your blood pressure is. We're not responsible for ourselves. God made us, God sustains us, and God will bring us home. That's what he says. And I suppose that's why you're listening to this morning. You're not really interested in what I have to say or what other humans have to say. For that, you can turn to any other sort of nonsense. This is instead about what the Father has to say, and his Son speaks the Father's will. And so he says, to the purpose to fill up my Father's house full. So I hope that message of comfort, of God's compassion, God's intention is that he wants you. That's simply it. And humans should not make any differences between each other. If Christians do this, or if anyone who claims to be God's people at the same time makes a difference and says, well, these people are excluded, I don't see how that is commensurate with what God explicitly says in this text from Luke 14, verse 23. With the purpose, hina, genisthe, that his house would fill right up and stay that way forever, and that's his anticipation, and that it's passive, and that you, in this, he does it for you. He'll bring you home. He'll raise you up from the grave and take you alive, immortal with him, to live forever. In his house, ho oikios, that means house. So I hope this has been a comfort for everyone. No exceptions, no lists of people that are excluded. Please stop doing that if you're one of those people doing that. That's wrong. but instead it's the gospel. The good news is an invitation, not exclusive, but an open invitation for all. I mentioned at the beginning that this would be about the quality and nature of the gospel. That is the primary nature and quality of the gospel. Unfortunately, the church has oftentimes, in many places and many times, turned it into something else. That's not right. It is all about an open invitation for all people. So hopefully this has been helpful to you. Again, this is Karl Schmidt, retired pastor from Calvary Lutheran Church in Amherst, New York. Hopefully you have some beautiful weather like we do here. And hopefully for fathers, you'll have a wonderful Father's Day. You could tie that into the text where the father's intention is to have all of his children home with him. And if you're a father and if you're fortunate enough in this day to have children home, or if they're far away helping out doctors or nurses or whatever, they're truck drivers driving food to different places, whatever your kids are doing, I hope that they look toward the fathers and say, hopefully it was a job well done and a thank you. Okay, well, you stay well and take care. Bye-bye.